Last week, there was a Senate hearing which essentially discussed how the US government can best support AI technology companies. And at this hearing, the message was loud and clear: regulation is out and domination is in. Sam Altman, Lisa Su, and other tech heavyweights lined up to tell Congress why America needs to sprint ahead in AI and why slowing down for any regulations could mean losing to China. At this hearing, Sam Altman's stance on the subject is a complete U-turn compared to his previous Senate appearance 2 years ago during the Biden presidency, where he specifically asked for the AI industry to be regulated.
Mr. Altman, here's your shot.
Thank you, Senator. Number one, I would form a new agency that licenses any effort above a certain scale of capabilities and can take that license away and ensure compliance with safety standards. Number two, I would create a set of safety standards focused on what you said in your third hypothesis as the dangerous capability evaluations. One example that we've used in the past is looking to see if a model can self-replicate and self-exfiltrate into the wild. We can give your office a long other list of the things that we think are important there, but specific tests that a model has to pass before it can be deployed into the world. And then third, I would require independent audits. So not just from the company or the agency, but experts who can say the model is or isn't in compliance with these stated safety thresholds and these percentages of performance on question X or Y.
The hearing was opened by Senator Ted Cruz. He gave quite a long speech, but it really boiled down to just these kind of talking points of we have to beat China, Biden is bad, Europe overregulates, and he kept making this distinction that adding regulations in the US would mean that the US becomes just like Europe and becomes also overregulated. Cruz goes on a rant against previous suggestions of regulation, including the testing regime to guard against AI discrimination, something which is a very real risk that has already been evidenced, as obviously AI is taught by humans and humans have inherent discriminatory biases. The funny thing is, he's arguing against what Sam Altman himself had called for at the Biden-era AI hearing. It was literally Sam Altman who said he wanted government oversight and for government-mandated testing of powerful AI models before they were released to the public. Yet Ted Cruz is resenting this as some archaic Biden government attempt to stifle technology because they didn't understand it.
President Biden's sweeping AI executive order, the longest executive order in American history, cast AI as dangerous and opaque, laying the groundwork for audits, for risk assessments, and regulatory certifications. Biden's approach inspired similar efforts in state legislatures across the country, threatening to burden startups, developers, and AI users with heavy compliance costs. Some of my colleagues suggest that a friendlier version of the Biden approach makes sense. They want a testing regime to guard against AI, quote, discrimination, and have government agencies provide, quote, guidance documents, seemingly something out of Orwell, that will usher in what they call best practices, as if AI engineers lack the intelligence to responsibly build AI without the bureaucrats.
It's crazy when he makes that claim at the end that surely AI engineers are intelligent enough to responsibly develop AI on their own without regulation. But you wouldn't say this about any other industry, especially an industry that has potential for catastrophic outcomes. So if you think of healthcare and pharmaceuticals, the energy industry, oil, gas, even banking, these are all industries that are heavily regulated because without regulation, you can't trust capitalistic businesses to put the consumer first, which is what regulations are for. So as expected, this is Ted Cruz's stance throughout the entire hearing. And, he speaks quite a lot, but it's much of the same. He's ultra-capitalistic. He believes regulations are terrible for businesses. They're terrible for consumers. They're terrible for the economy. And any suggestion of regulations previously is blamed almost entirely on the Biden administration, even though Sam Altman in the past has been very vocal about wanting some of those regulations. Though it's hard to say how much of that was to appease the administration at the time and how much of it is actually Sam Altman's genuine beliefs, because he does seem to flip to a completely different narrative quite easily. The rest of the senators and representatives' questions were quite predictable and largely revolved around questions such as, what can we do to make sure we beat China? How do we invest in AI better? With only a few minor questions around safety, and those were mostly restricted to really small concerns about children using chatbots rather than the impact of AGI or artificial general intelligence. However, there was a massive focus from the panel about the importance of American investment at every level of the tech stack to make the US fully self-sufficient and attempt to make the rest of the world fully reliant. So they want the software and the AI models to come out of the US. They want the infrastructure, including the chips and the data centers, to be in the US. And they want all that support for the land, the power usages, the connectivity. They were desperately pushing to encourage this idea that massive investment now is what secures the win for the US in the long term, especially against competitors like China.
Let me ask you this, and this is to each of the four witnesses. In the race for AI, who's winning, America or China? If the answer is America, how close is China to us? And what do we do to make sure the answer remains America will win? Mr. Altman, we'll start with you.
It is our belief that the American models, including some models from our company, OpenAI and Google and others, are the best models in the world. It's very hard to say how far ahead we are, but I would say not a huge amount of time. And I think to continue that leadership position and the influence that comes with that, and all of the incredible benefits of the world using American technology products and services, the things that my colleagues have spoken about here, the need to win in infrastructure, sensible regulation that does not slow us down, this sort of spirit of innovation and entrepreneurship that I think is a uniquely American thing in the world. None of this is rocket science. We just need to keep doing the things that have worked for so long and not make a silly mistake.
Dr. Su?
I'll answer in the realm of chips. I would say America is ahead in chips today. We have the best AI accelerators in the world. I think China, although they have restrictions given their ability to use advanced technologies, the one thing that's very important for us all to remember is there are multiple ways to do things. You know, having the best chips is great, but even if you don't have the best chips, you can get a lot done. So I think this conversation about how far behind China is, they are certainly catching up because there are many ways to do things. I think relative to what we can do, I will continue to say, really ensure that our spirit of innovation is allowed to work. And that is having very supportive government policies to do that, having very consistent policies, and allowing us to do what we do best, which is innovate at every layer of the stack.
Mr. Trader?
So I'll speak to it from the physical infrastructure and software stack to deliver that. America is ahead, but it is the Achilles heel from the perspective of the ability, as I started to better? Sorry about that. So the ability to build very large solutions to the computing infrastructure component of this is an area that we're going to struggle with from a permitting and building large projects to be able to deliver the power to allow those building artificial intelligence to continue to move as fast as they can in the race that we're in.
So here we just heard that all the panelists generally agree that there needs to be a massive investment in infrastructure in the US in order to beat China to AGI and dominate the AI market worldwide. The most alarming part of this, though, is that all of them want to limit regulation. Throughout the hearing, they constantly warned against any kind of regulation but didn't give any true alternatives. The only suggestion of regulations or standards that they touched on was that the industry, meaning AI tech companies, would figure out what those regulations and standards should be, which sounds a lot like self-regulation and entirely defeats the purpose. Another thing to keep in mind is what Michael Intrater from CoreWeave said at the very end. He's promoting physical infrastructure investment in terms of data centers and power generation to power this massively hungry AI hardware, but also used it to highlight the need for less regulations and less permits. And the reason for those permits and regulations as they stand are largely environmental. Though if the US commits to this all-out AI race, which it looks like it's going to, things like environmental concerns are going to be the first thing to go out the window. Now, as I said, Sam Altman's perspective on regulations has changed a lot since his last appearance 2 years ago, so I want to show you the most relevant part of what he said about regulations.
how harmful would it be to winning the race for AI if America goes down the road of the EU and creates a heavy-handed prior approval government regulatory process for AI?
I think that would be disastrous. To give a more specific answer to your previous question, which I think touches on why it would be so bad, there are three key inputs to these AI systems. There's compute, all the infrastructure we're talking about. There's algorithms that we all do research on, and there's data. If you don't have any one of those, you cannot succeed in making the best models. And as Brad said, the way for America to influence the world here is to have the technology that people most want to use and most adopt. The world uses iPhones and Google and Microsoft products, and that's wonderful. Like, that's how we have our influence. We don't want that to stop happening. So systems that stop us on any of these areas, you know, if we have rules about what data we can train on that are not competitive with the rest of the world, then things can fall apart. If we are not able to build the infrastructure, and particularly if we're not able to manufacture the chips in this country, the rules can fall apart. If we can't build the products that people want, that naturally win in the market, and I think people do want to use American products, we can make them the best. But if we're prevented from doing that, people will use a better product made from somebody else that doesn't have the sort of, you know, that is not stymied in the same way. So it is, I am nervous about standards being set too early. I'm totally fine, you know, with the position some of my colleagues took, that standards, once the industry figures out what they should be, it's fine for them to be adopted by a government body and sort of made more official. But I believe the industry is moving quickly towards figuring out the right protocols and standards here, and we need the space to innovate and to move quickly.
So if each of you could briefly answer that question, because my time's expired, so I want to be respectful of that.
I agree with the comments that Sam put up.
I agree, and I would just say, and I think the point you're making is we have to be very careful not to have these pre-approval requirements, including at state levels, because that would really slow innovation in the country.
I think that a patchwork of regulatory overlays will cause friction in the ability to build and extend what we're doing.
Overall, the hearing was interesting to see how the US government is pivoting in the AI space. The problem I see with this hearing is that these are multi-billion-dollar tech companies, and it's not even that they've been given a platform to argue their case against regulations. It's that the government, especially senators like Ted Cruz, already believes regulations are bad, and having checks and balances makes the US just like the EU. And now these multi-billion-dollar tech companies have been invited to provide essentially witness statements to back up the government's position. There are aspects to it that are relatively good. For instance, I can see how infrastructure investment for chips in the US is great, and how lowering permitting requirements for energy infrastructure would be good, especially as an electrical grid that can support electric vehicles and increased demand in the future is going to be a necessity going forward. But on the whole, there was practically zero talk of why regulations were ever even suggested, only talk of why regulations are bad. The only time a question was asked with regards to the potential harm of artificial general intelligence and the doomsday scenarios that are very real enough for Sam Altman himself to warn against them previously. He completely dodged the question and went on a tangent about how he believes humans have a wonderful ability to adapt and are amazing. So I'll leave you with that clip so you can see for yourself, and hopefully I'm not the only one that's a little bit worried with this new direction.
The expert, you know, some people are worried about AI or whatever, and I'm like, you know, what about the singularity? So, you know, the people like that, if you would address that, please.
Thank you, Senator, for the kind words and for normalizing hoodies in more spaces. I'd love to see that. I am incredibly excited about the rate of progress, but I also am cautious and I would say, like, I don't know, I feel small next to it or something. I think this is beyond something that we all fully yet understand where it's going to go. This is, I believe, among the biggest, maybe it'll turn out to be the biggest technological revolutions humanity will have ever produced. And I feel privileged to be here. I feel curious and interested in what's going to happen. But I do think things are going to change quite substantially. I think humans have a wonderful ability to adapt and things that seem amazing will become the new normal very quickly. We will figure out how to use these tools to just do things we could never do before. And I think it will be quite extraordinary. But these are going to be tools that are capable of things that we can't quite wrap our heads around. And some people call that, you know, as these tools start helping us to create next future iterations, some people call that singularity, some people call that the takeoff, whatever it is, it feels like a sort of new era of human history. And
As always, thanks so much for watching. If you've made it this far, please think about subscribing. If you've got any thoughts on the video, then drop a comment below.